Thanks for joining us today. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands across Australia in which we're gathered today, and welcome Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us. I'm coming to you from the very beautiful land of the Dja Dja Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and that's in central Victoria. And I very much recognise and am thankful for their continued role in caring for country, their strength and sharing of wisdom. And as Mal said, we're going to be outlining the FRRR's Prepare and Recover program today. So that's the funding that supports community-led initiatives in rural, remote and regional Australia to prevent and prepare for climate-related impacts, as well as recovery from existing disasters. And we're going to be happy to stay on afterwards to answer any questions. So just in terms of what FRRR is, we're the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal. We were established over 20 years ago to stimulate and support FRRR communities. So that's the rural, remote and regional communities across Australia. So we receive our funding from a variety of sources, including government, corporate and businesses, philanthropy and family trusts, as well as individuals. And then we grant these out to build local capacity, resilience and long-term vitality of these communities. And it's very much a focus on local solutions, responding to local opportunities and issues. So that's our remit. So we have a focus on three main areas, which is investing in people, and that's volunteer-led efforts, not-for-profits and community groups to drive this change and prosperity across Australia. We also fund and support with a very much a place-based lens. So that's directing funds towards specific geographic areas or communities to strengthen those communities. And we also have the disaster resilience and climate solutions focus, which is partnering before, during and after disasters to build local resilience. So if we move on to the next slide, and that's Strengthening Rural Communities, the SRC Grants Program. This is FRRR's flagship grants program, and it has grants to support community-led projects and very much any project that's charitable and has a broad community benefit, and it's in those rural, remote and regional communities, we can fund it. And that might be anything from upgrades to community halls, governance training, volunteer capacity building, community gardens. That's just to name very few of the projects we support. So it is designed to, as I said before, respond to those issues that communities identify are important to them. So just want to go back one slide. So there's three funding streams under this. We've got the Small and Vital, which is up to $10,000. We've got Rebuilding Regional Communities funding, which is government, federal government funding to respond to COVID, and that's up to $10,000. And we've got one more round of up to $50,000. That's opening 1st of September for grants to support COVID recovery. And we've got the Prepare and Recover stream, which my colleague April will take you through now.
Brooke, are you going to cover this one?
Yeah, good afternoon. I will actually take you through some of the key points of the Prepare and Recover. It is for grants of up to $25,000, and as Carly mentioned, there is a broad range of initiatives that can be supported in this program. The focus is to prevent, to prepare for future climate-related impacts, or to recover from existing disasters. There's a range of disasters that are listed in the current program, including Black Summer bushfires, 2021 flooding in New South Wales and Queensland, tropical cyclone Sarojam, and 2022 flooding events across all the states listed there. The program is designed to support recovery of disaster impacted communities in the medium to long-term time frame. This may be when communities are sort of shifting their focus to the longer term, and other opportunities for funding may reduce. So, that's the program really looks at, preparing, but also, the recovery as well. We've just got some points to talk about, might need to think about when looking at applying through this program. Firstly, how will this project help your community be better prepared for future disasters? Or how will it help your community recover from the current event, which is the ones that were listed previously? Some projects might require local government approval or permissions required. And what we really love to see is the broad community support of projects in your community. As I mentioned, there's sometimes other funding available in other programs, but really we just like to see how it will prepare or help your community recover. In talking about that, we also consider if there is a project that might be subject to an insurance claim following a disaster. And just sort of going back to, community support and things like that, and the timing for your community as well. Is it the right time? Just some key points to think about. I'm just going to pass over. April, is that you?
Yes, thank you. So to be eligible in this program, you have to be in a declared disaster area. So this slide is really to help you find out if you are eligible. So when you go to our website page for Prepare and Recover, and the landing page, and you scroll down a bit, and there's a section which gives you lots of information about the grant and how to apply. And the section that you're looking for is the grant available in my area. So you'd click on where that red arrow is, and it'll open up the bottom box there that says, is this grant available in my area? And it gives a list of the disasters that we can fund, and then there's the little highlighted sections next to them that have each state or territory's declared disaster codes. So with those, you'd need to click on, you'd probably have to sort of go through them and click on them, and it'll pop up an image like on the right hand side for South Australia floods. And on those pages, really the best way to find it is just to scroll down to the very bottom, and they list the local government areas for those declared disasters. In saying that you need to be in a declared disaster area, we do have a small amount of funds that if there are localised climate impacts in your region that aren't a declared disaster, we do have some ability to fund those local impact issues. So if that happens, and if you've got a disaster in your area and it's not state or nationally declared disaster, you can contact us to talk to us, and we can talk through whether we can support your project. So talking about projects, there's the types of projects that we see under the recovery focus come under a different categories. So these are the types of things that we've seen over the last couple of years come through for recovery. So social connections and events. So communities are looking for festivals or community gathering events where communities can have a lunch together, just ways to help the community rebond after disasters occurred. Infrastructure, so we see a lot of requests for infrastructure, so upgrading community halls or meeting spaces for community, and also community organisations are seeking funds to purchase material and equipment to improve their service delivery. Creative recovery is actually a really big theme that's coming through, and it's in pretty much all the creative disciplines. So we've seen communities using, performances, poetry, physical creative sculpture, paintings, all those sorts of things. It's really about giving communities opportunities to tell their story. With community services, we've seen projects, and we like to fund projects supporting food relief, maybe accommodation, or projects that support neighbourhood houses or other dedicated community services in your area. Wellbeing, mental health is a big one that comes through. So there's lots of different ways that we've seen that communities are asking for funding to deliver mental health workshops or mental health support, suicide network support, all those sorts of things. And again, with arts and culture, so we've seen lots of First Nation responses to recovery and how communities support that, and artists' response to definitely recovery. So with economic recovery, we're seeing communities asking for funding to support improvements in their town so that they can bring people back, so that they can start getting people to come and spend their money in their town, or even support for financial counselling. And volunteer and capacity building is a really big one that's coming through, and it's increasingly happening as the disasters move into different stages, that communities are seeing that they need a lot of support to rebuild their volunteer base, to attract volunteers, and to support the volunteers they have. And then with the organisations themselves, they're needing support to look at, well, how are they going to keep delivering what they're doing? So, strategic planning or funding, extra people is a really big theme. So with preparedness, we've seen different types of projects. And again, the organisational capacity building is a really big one as well. So with those the projects we're seeing is organisations looking at how they can develop disaster preparedness plans, or what they're going to do as an organisation to prepare for when things change and they need to respond. Again, similar with the recovery, volunteer training is an equipment so they could be better prepared. It's really important that organisations have the people there ready, and they keep them engaged and they keep them trained for when they need them. Infrastructure, we've seen lots of different kinds of infrastructure. So physical infrastructure about improving evacuation places, or safe places where people go when there is a disaster, but also mobile infrastructure, like the photo there, Southern Health and Sustainability Alliance, they have a mobile power unit on a trailer. We've seen projects where communities want to boost their internet and phone connections as well. Building networks for people, so just having events to bring organisations and supporters together so that they can talk about what they can do together in a disaster. And creating resources and tools is really important to share knowledge and to share things that they've done that have been successful. So websites, communication resources, and opportunities to have presentations so groups can connect. So Carly will now go through some projects that we've got that we can highlight so you can see what communities are actually applying for. Thanks, Carly.
Thanks, April. I'll commence with some flood projects we've recently funded. So the first one I'll talk about is in Victoria. It's the Nathalia Community House. It's a recovery project. So we were able to provide $10,000 for that community house to improve the accessibility of the neighbourhood house, as well as the food share area. So it's just a more pleasant place for people to gather and access that service. Also some activities to bring community together. And this really highlights the importance of neighbourhood and community houses supporting disaster impacted communities. And that's whether it's by helping people to access support relief payments, providing food relief, and also holding recovery activities and places for people to gather. Okay, we'd like to talk about the Queensland one.
So this project is from the Northern East Downs Landcare Group in Queensland, and it's for a preparedness project. So in this community, they had obviously a flood come through, and they've noticed that they need to support resilience of the landscape so that the flood doesn't take everything out. So with the result, the thing that they said they needed is some more education in building landscape restoration. So they're bringing in a natural sequence farming educator to talk to them about how do you rebuild and restore your landscapes to improve them for floods.
And we've got some bushfire recovery projects, and I'll let April talk about the New South Wales one.
So the Modern Arts Project in the Blue Mountains Association, that's in Lithgow. They have an annual large festival, a Cementa Festival, and they wanted to add to this festival and make it an opportunity for the community who had been impacted by the bushfires to share their experiences, to connect, and to also sort of express those feelings of the bushfire and what how it impacted them through creative art pieces.
And there's another one, this is Noanga up in WA, so that's in the Great Southern area. They were impacted by the Black Summer bushfires. So this group came to FRRR and we were able to fund just under $12,000 to put 2 new installations on a iconic tourist trail, the Horsepower Highway. So this is all about supporting and acknowledging the volunteers that respond to emergencies. So they were we were able to fund the materials for this particular project, and it really fostered and celebrated connection to local place and culture through that imagery and the storytelling around the installation. It was going to boost visitation to the region and therefore strengthen the economy. And what we really loved about this project, that there was strong partnerships in place, and that included in-kind contributions, as well as evidence through letters of support that lots of the community was embraced this project. And that included the local fire brigade, the Progress Association and council, showing that they supported the project. So a really lovely project. So it ended up transforming 2 vintage donated tractors to add to that trail. I've got a couple of bushfire preparedness projects. So the first one is in Yorktown in South Australia, another area impacted by the Black Summer bushfires. This is an isolated area down the end of the peninsula. We were able to provide $25,000 in a grant for a community-owned incident response trailer. And this was to support volunteers in responding to natural disasters and emergencies, and that was by transforming, so firstly buying and then fitting out that trailer so it could deploy food and water and also basic first aid at times of emergency. And pleasingly at other times it's going to be used for community events, so it's got that broader use, which is really lovely. So another thing with this was we could see that the sustainability of the trailer was going to be looked after by local service clubs funding the registration and repairs, for instance, on an ongoing manner. So that was good to see. In terms of another one, we've moved across to Tasmania, the east coast of Tasmania, Bicheno. So just north of here is a 54-hectare conservation park called the Seymour Conservation Park. So we funded $10,000 to the local land care group. And this was to eradicate weeds in this area, particularly gorse, which is extremely flammable. So this is reducing the fuel load. So it's a preparedness project to make sure when future fires go through, they don't have that fuel load. And the group sought the funding for spraying and slashing of the gorse. And this was considered to be a task that was way too big for the volunteers to undertake themselves. So in some ways we were supporting the volunteer capacity as well, that they get the contractors in to do the this big task, and then they can continue doing their working bees, which improves the conservation areas for the locals as well as visitors, but also creates that connection of locals through the working bees and being part of that land care group. And we've got a cyclone project just to highlight the diversity of projects that come under the Prepare and Recover banner. So this is in the mid-west coast of WA. In April 2021, Cyclone Shiroja went through this area, created lots of destruction. So we had the Shire of Carnamah come to us for a preparedness project. And the idea was that they wanted to have the electrical switchboards upgraded at a Shire-owned medical and welfare centre, and that was to ensure that in future emergencies they would be able to withstand power outages, and that was really important so the services could continue, and also as a place for people to receive communications. So that was a project that received $10,000.
Thanks, Carly. So this slide is really just to show you on our website how to find our grants. So there's 2 ways. You can go through the button on down the left with the red arrow pointing to it. It says find funding now, and it'll ask you a few questions to try and filter out the funding options that you've got with FRRR. Or if you are just looking for disaster grants, you can go to where the yellow arrow is pointing to. You click on the funding tab and it'll drop down all our funding options, and the disaster grants is where you'll find Prepare and Recover and other disaster grants. So there's lots of ways we can help. We've got online resources which help you understand our grant programs, so grant guidelines and other things. We've also got webinars such as this one, and there's other webinars if you're looking at other programs, especially with the Rebuilding Rural Communities program, which is our COVID program. There's a webinar talking about that program. We've got an online application form, and that's when you'll find those and access to those, and even a PDF that you can download to have a look at the questions before you go online. We have a really great grants officers who support and provide phone support. So we've got phone assistance, a 1-800 toll-free number that you can call. You can call us and talk to us about, ask us any questions, or if you've got a project idea and just not sure if you want to invest the time, whether it's the right project, then you can call us and talk to our grant officers, and they'll provide some advice about the things that maybe you need to do, or whether it would fit, or whether you're eligible. You can also subscribe to our e-newsletter. It comes out monthly, and there's lots of information in there about grant programs that are available, or things that we're doing, or where we're visiting. Okay, I'll hand over to Miles now.
Thank you guys for a great presentation. So now we just want to, I'll stop sharing. We just want to basically hand over the floor to everyone else for any questions that you have for our wonderful team of experts. I see there are a couple of things in the chat here, so let's just have a quick look. No questions. Has anyone, if you've got a question, feel free just to jump on and shout out to us, or you could put it in the message as well if you want to in the chat. Everyone's feeling a bit quiet today. Understandable. Well, if anyone does have any questions, you can also always get in touch with us via the 1-800 number. Oh, here we go. So we've got a question from Janine. What are the timeframes for rolling out grant projects? Who else to take?
So we tend to grant out in a 12-month timeline. So if you've got a project, it needs to be finished by 12 months, but we are very open to groups that need additional time, or there might be some changes to the project, that if you just get in touch with us and check with us, because we know that things change, we know that you might need some additional time. So very much happy to receive requests from you about variations of time, as well as the project scope might slightly change as you roll it out. We are very much flexible and open to having those discussions.
Thanks, Carly. Any other questions from anyone before we sign off? Well, here we go. We've got another one from Sharon. Can we apply for more than one project under the same grant round?
I'll take that one. No, unfortunately, you can only apply for one project under the same grant round, but as our Prepare and Recover is under the banner of Strengthening Rural Communities, and we have two other programs under that, you can only apply for one program, one application in a Strengthening Rural Communities program. So if you have an application in the Prepare and Recover, and then in our Small and Vital round, we will only be able to fund one of those projects, or consider those projects for funding.
Thanks, April. Got a question here from Fran. If we are a relatively new presence in the community, will that matter? Just thinking letters of support might be an issue.
And we definitely know that can be an issue, particularly for smaller communities, that you might not have that scale of other groups that you can get letters of support from. And if you're a new group, we would want to see that there's some support for that project, and that would be you demonstrating the need for the project and outlining that. We would always get in touch if we felt like there needed to be a stronger showing of community support, but it's also worth talking with your council about the project, because they can also provide a letter of support for the project. But we know that just because it's a good project, you do need to have the community behind you for it to have that impact.
And just while we're talking about letters of support, we know how difficult it can be to get letters of support. So they don't have to be physical letters. You can, we can also accept if you take screenshots of emails, or an image of, if you've got a Facebook comments of community supporting your project. We can take those, or any sort of form of a testimonial. So it doesn't have to be on a letterhead. Like, that's, you know, obviously a nice thing to have, but we know how difficult and how time consuming that is. So, you know, we can look at other ways to see the community supporting your project.
And actually, just to get a wee plug in here as well, if people are have questions about letters of support, our next webinar will be on this very topic. So in early June, we're about to start advertising it, but we will be having one in early June, looking specifically at letters of support. So the next question we have is from Nat. What size population communities does FRRR target?
We tend to focus on under 15,000, but we also know that larger population, larger towns actually support the surrounding rural and regional communities. So that's one of those things. If it's a larger town, say under 50,000, you'd want to just outline how that town is supporting other communities around them, or it might be that the community that's larger is actually an evacuation centre or a place of recovery for the surrounding area. So there's ways of having that, demonstrating that even if it's a larger town, it does have broader regional and rural connections. So that's something as well, if you have any doubts about the population size, if it seems a bit larger, that you'd want to give our grants officers a call and have that discussion with us, because we don't want you to waste your time. We know it's very time consuming applying for grants. So we very much encourage you, if you have any doubts or questions, to give us a call and we can talk you through to make sure what you're doing is right and that the town or the community or project is actually eligible.
Thanks, Carly. Now, so we've got a question here from Andrew around ABS remoteness criteria. So are the ABS guidelines for remoteness, rural and regional different, or all included in the ABS remoteness mapping classification? I'm not entirely clear on that. I'm not sure, you guys.
So generally, as Carly mentioned, we look at population size, but we also consider the remote area indexes, so the metro areas and outer regional, Indian regional and remote. But we'll also, we'll just always look at the town, you look at where they are on a map and consider whether, you know, we would be able to support them.
April. So another question here. Questions are just flying in now. Bring up your voice. And can you apply for the next round if your initial project does not get accepted in this round?
Yes, you can. So if it's declined in one round, we would very much encourage you. We do, when we send a email with that you weren't successful, we do encourage the groups to contact us for feedback, so we can then talk through how you can strengthen the application for the next round. But very much don't take a no as a don't apply to us again. Sometimes we just have a lot of demand on our grants program, so the no might be that we just didn't have sufficient funding in that particular round. It might still be a great project, or it might be some things that you can do to strengthen the application. So definitely give us a call and chat through. We won't call you with the feedback. We will rely on you to give us a call.
Thanks, Carly. Good question here from Kylie. Is there a limit on the amount of funding for an LGA in any round or year?
The simple answer is no. But our funding really is dependent on our donors, and we have national funding available, but sometimes we have more funding in different LGAs depending on what that donor wants to fund. So I can say the simple answer is no, but we also have in some LGAs there'll be a better chance of accessing some funding.
Thanks, April. Question from Ivy. Our community has been hit by drought, fires and floods in the last 4 years. So the land and community has been hit hard by this run of disasters. I'm wondering whether it's okay for our application to be addressing both these needs, or do we need to focus on environment or community?
I would say that that's the story for lots of communities, isn't it? Those cumulative disasters as well as then COVID hitting. So we know that that's had a huge impact on the communities and the volunteers, I would say that you could address both of those, because that's, if that project addresses environment and community, that's fine. And that might be one of those ones that you have a discussion with our grants officers or ourselves, just to run through what you had in mind for that particular project. We want to make sure the projects succeed, so you want to make sure it has a particular focus, but without knowing the particular project, it's hard to answer that. But it's definitely, you could address both environment and community, because helping the environment helps the community and vice versa.
Thanks, Carly. So that's the end of our current questions in the chat. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to put out there?
Yeah, I've got a question. I started to type, but it might be easier just to explain. I'm looking through the program guidelines. Are there things that you wouldn't cover? So, for example, we're looking to put together a guide. So things like, printing the guide and things like that would be costs. But also keen to get a bunch of people contributing to the guide. Would payments, say for writing and editing and things like that, come under the funding? Could it be possible to fund those parts of the project from this grant?
The answer would be yes. So we can fund just quite a large number of things, as long as it's charitable. So in the guidelines, we've got a list of charitability, and it suits the project, and that you've, I guess, done the due diligence about the right contractors that you're going to get.
Thank you.
The other thing you'd need to address is that council or some other agency hasn't already produced that type of material, that you're actually satisfying a gap in the community. And it might be that there's nothing that's locally focused, or maybe that resource isn't there, but we don't want to fund or duplicate what's already out there. So it's about you making sure that you let us know that it's actually something that's needed and there's a gap.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, anyone. It doesn't look like we've got any more questions at this point. If anyone does come up with thoughts or questions, you'll all have my email address because I sent you all the links, so feel free just to chuck your questions in an email. Oh, here we go. No, sorry, we've got another question from Kylie. How do you know there is a gap? Do you just trust the community about that question?
We have a lot of trust in the community telling us what they need. We'll do our own due diligence, but it also, those letters of support or evidence of strategic planning, or it might be some media, if you've got anything that can demonstrate it. But often, if there is some trust at our end, but also that you know your community's best.
Thanks, Kylie. I think that's actually an important message that's definitely the ethos that we grant by, isn't it? That the community knows what the community needs. So
that's right. So
it looks like we've got no more questions. One last chance. I feel like an auctioneer. Going once, going twice. All right. So as I said, if you've got any questions, you'll have my email address. So feel free to pop an email through or to call the 1-800 number that April mentioned previously. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending today. As I mentioned earlier, you will receive a copy of the recording from this session, or a link to the recording, and so that you can go back and view it at your pleasure. And a big thank to our presenters today as well. A big thank you to our presenters, Carly, April and Brooke, for doing that job. All right, lots of thank yous there. See, everyone enjoyed it. Well done, team.